My name is Maya, and I just turned 32 years old last Saturday. I work as a registered nurse at a hospital in Seattle, pulling 12-hour shifts 3 days a week and picking up overtime whenever the floor is short-staffed, which lately feels like every single weekend. I still remembered in Beacon Hill with my best friend Diane, who works at a coffee roastery downtown and splits the rent with me so we can both survive in a city that seems determined to price out everyone who actually keeps it running. We eat a lot of pasta. We clip digital coupons. We joke that our retirement plan is dying on the job, and most days the joke lands a little too close to the truth. I am not complaining. I chose this life. I chose this city, and I genuinely love being a nurse, even on the days that break me. But I want you to understand exactly where I was standing on the morning of my brother Daniel's wedding, financially, emotionally, all of it. Because where I was standing made what happened inside that reception hall feel like the ground had been pulled out from beneath my feet. Daniel is 3 years older than me. He is charming and loud and the kind of person who fills a room without trying. He was marrying a woman named Claire, whose family owned a chain of boutique hotels up and down the Pacific Northwest coast. The wedding was held at one of those hotels, a restored Victorian property on Puget Sound, with white-painted balconies and views of the water that honestly made me feel like I had stumbled into a film set. I had saved for 4 months to afford the train ticket, the hotel room for 2 nights, and a wedding gift that wouldn't embarrass me. I wore a dress I bought on clearance. I curled my own hair in the hotel bathroom at 6 in the morning. My Uncle Robert arrived at the rehearsal dinner the evening before, and I noticed immediately that he seemed different, quieter than usual. He kept watching my stepfather across the table with an expression I could not quite read. Not hostile, exactly. More like a man doing long division in his head. Uncle Robert is my mother's older brother. He built a commercial real estate company from nothing in the 80s and grew it into something worth considerable money. He is not flashy about it. He drives a 10-year-old truck and wears the same brand of canvas jacket he has worn my entire life. But people in the family know. And people outside the family who do business in the Pacific Northwest know that Robert is not a man you want sitting across from you at a negotiating table. He hugged me at the rehearsal dinner and held on a second longer than usual. "How are you really doing, Maya?" he said. "Tired," I told him honestly, "but good. Happy for Daniel." He nodded slowly and looked at me for a moment before someone else pulled him into a conversation. I thought nothing of it. The wedding ceremony the next afternoon was beautiful. Claire cried. Daniel cried. I cried into a cocktail napkin, and Diane, who I had brought as my +1 because she had never seen the sound and deserved something nice, quietly handed me a second napkin without saying a word. That is the kind of friend she is. The reception moved into the hotel's grand ballroom after sunset. There were speeches, there was dancing, there was a 4-tier cake with salted caramel filling that I am still thinking about. I was on my 3rd glass of water and genuinely relaxed for the first time in months when Uncle Robert appeared at my side and touched my elbow lightly. "Can I pull you away for just a minute?" he said. "There's something I need to ask you." I followed him through a side door into a smaller adjoining room used for private events. It had low lighting and a few velvet chairs arranged around a coffee table. He closed the door behind us. He turned to face me and his expression was careful, measured, the way it gets when he is about to say something he has been rehearsing. "Maya," he said, "did you ever receive the investment account? The one your father set up before he passed?" I looked at him. "What investment account?" I said. The shift in his face was immediate. It was not dramatic. Uncle Robert does not do dramatic, but something behind his eyes went very still, the way a lake goes still right before a storm front arrives. "Sit down," he said quietly. "Please." I sat. My father died when I was 4 years old. I have almost no memory of him. A voice, a particular smell, the feeling of being carried up a staircase. My mother remarried when I was 7. My stepfather Gary came into our lives with a broad smile and a firm handshake and a knack for making himself indispensable. He coached Daniel's baseball team. He drove me to school every morning for 6 years. He stood in the back of the auditorium at my nursing school graduation and took photographs on his phone. He was not a bad stepfather. I want to be clear about that, because what I am about to tell you is complicated in the way that only family can be. Uncle Robert told me that my father, before he died, had opened an investment account in my name and placed his entire life insurance payout into it. My father had been a software engineer at a firm that went public 18 months before his death, and he had exercised a significant amount of stock options in the window before the IPO. The original deposit into the account had been $48.5 million. I heard the number and I did not react right away. I think my brain simply refused to process it. $4.5 million, I said. At the time of deposit, yes, Uncle Robert said, with instructions that it was to be held in trust until your 25th birthday and then transferred entirely to you. I turned 25 7 years ago. I had spent those 7 years working double shifts to pay off my nursing school loans. I had eaten ramen for dinner more times than I could count. I had called my mother twice, asking if there was any family money that could help me bridge a gap when my car broke down and I couldn't cover both the repair bill and rent in the same month. She had said no both times, her voice sympathetic and slightly strained, and I had believed her because she was my mother and I had no reason not to. Robert, I said, and my voice came out very steady in a way that surprised me. Where is the account now? He reached into his jacket and set a printed document on the coffee table between us. I looked at it without touching it. It was a financial statement. The account still existed. The balance was $240,000. I stared at that number for a long time. The original $4.5 million, Uncle Robert said carefully, with conservative investment returns over 28 years, should have grown to somewhere between $11 and $14 million. Something moved through me that I do not have a precise word for. It was not anger yet. It was more like the sensation of realizing you are in a room you do not recognize, that disorienting moment before your nervous system has decided how to respond. Who had access to the account? I asked. Your mother was named co-trustee, he said. She had full management authority until your 25th birthday, at which point the account was supposed to transfer to you automatically. The transfer was blocked. The management authority was quietly renewed. And Gary? Uncle Robert looked at the window. Gary has been listed as a financial advisor on the account since shortly after their marriage. He is not a licensed financial advisor. He has no formal credentials of any kind. I thought about my car breaking down. I thought about calling my mother and asking for help and her voice going carefully sympathetic on the other end of the line. I thought about every holiday dinner where Gary had poured expensive wine and talked expansively about the real estate properties he was looking at, the investment opportunities he was tracking, the deals that were just about to come together. How did you find out? I said. Uncle Robert had been suspicious for years, he told me. My father had confided in him before he died, told him about the account, asked him to keep an eye on things from a distance. For a long time, everything had seemed fine. The account was growing. There were no red flags on the documents he could access through his own attorney. It was only when his attorney flagged an unusual series of withdrawals 3 years ago, withdrawals that coincided almost exactly with the purchase of my mother and Gary's vacation home in Scottsdale, that he had begun pulling threads. I should have come to you sooner, he said. I wanted to be absolutely certain before I said a word to you. I'm sorry it took this long. I looked at the financial statement on the table. I picked it up and held it. $240,000 out of what should have been 11 to 14 million. They were planning something, Uncle Robert said, and he pulled out his phone and set it face up on the table next to the document. On the screen was a screenshot of an email, and I recognized my stepfather's address in the sender line. The email had been forwarded to Uncle Robert's attorney by someone I did not know. It was a thread between Gary and a property management contact, a discussion about liquidating assets, transferring funds offshore, and a reference to flights booked to Costa Rica in 11 days. 11 days. I set the financial statement back down on the table. I sat very still for a moment. Outside the door, I could hear the faint sound of the reception band starting a slow song, and the muffled sound of my brother's friends cheering, and the whole warm, ordinary noise of a wedding continuing without me while my entire understanding of my own life rearranged itself in a quiet side room with velvet chairs and low lighting. What do I need to do? I said. My attorney is already involved, Uncle Robert said. I didn't want to move forward without telling you first. But if you want to pursue this, and I believe you should, We need to move quickly. I want to pursue this, I said. There was no hesitation. He nodded. He looked at me with something in his eyes that might have been relief. Your father would be very proud of you, he said. He was proud of you. He made sure you'd be taken care of. He just couldn't have known. I excused myself to use the restroom before I went back to the reception, and I stood at the sink for about 2 minutes looking at my own face in the mirror. Then I washed my hands, dried them carefully, went back into the ballroom and sat down next to Diane. She looked at me sideways. You okay? Not even a little bit, I said. But I will be. Dance with me. We danced. I danced at my brother's wedding and smiled at my mother across the room and watched my stepfather laugh loudly at someone's joke near the bar, and I kept my face perfectly composed and I thought about 11 days. The following morning, I met with Uncle Robert's attorney, a sharp, quiet woman named Patricia, in a hotel conference room before checkout. She walked me through everything methodically. The withdrawals from my trust account were documented across a period of 9 years. They had been funneled through a series of LLCs that Gary had opened and dissolved in rotating cycles, a technique Patricia described as not sophisticated but persistent. The Scottsdale Vacation Home, a boat registered to one of the LLCs. 2 European vacations per year for a decade, a series of bad real estate investments Gary had made with money that was not his to invest. Patricia told me we had multiple avenues: civil suit for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud, potential criminal referral for embezzlement of trust assets, and a motion to freeze remaining assets immediately pending investigation. She recommended we pursue all 3 simultaneously. What about the Costa Rica flights? I asked. She allowed herself a small, business-like smile. We filed the asset freeze order this morning. Their accounts are already locked. Wherever they were planning to go, they won't be going there with anything. I want to tell you about the conversation I had with my mother 2 days after the wedding, because it matters, and because I think you need to understand that none of this was simple for me. I called her and asked her to meet me alone without Gary. She came to a coffee shop near her house in Portland, and she sat across from me with her hands wrapped around a mug, and she looked tired and older than I remembered. She had known, she told me. She had known for most of it. Gary had come to her early in the marriage and told her the account was being managed for growth, and that transferring it to me at 25 would expose the family to tax liabilities, and she had let herself believe him because believing him was easier than the alternative. Over the years, the easier explanations had multiplied until she had built an entire architecture of not quite knowing that let her look at me at Christmas dinner and at my college graduation, and not say anything. You called me twice asking for money, I said. She looked at her coffee. You knew what was in that account, I said. And you told me no. She didn't answer for a long time. Then she said, I know. There is nothing I can write here that fully captures what it is like to sit across from your mother and understand that she chose comfort over you, repeatedly, across years, while you were struggling. I am not going to try to summarize it. I will only tell you that I did not cry in that coffee shop. I cried later, alone, at length. What I felt in the moment was something colder and more clarifying than tears. I told her that I was proceeding with every legal option available to me. I told her I was not making this decision out of anger but out of the straightforward understanding that what had been done to me was wrong and illegal, and there needed to be consequences. I told her that whatever happened next was the result of choices she and Gary had made, not choices I was making now. She nodded and said she understood. I left the coffee shop and called Patricia from the parking lot. The civil case moved faster than I expected. Gary's pattern of LLC creation and dissolution had been sloppy enough that Patricia's team was able to reconstruct the full trail within 6 weeks. When faced with the documentation, Gary's attorney recommended that he settle rather than go to trial. Gary and my mother liquidated every asset that could be liquidated: the Scottsdale house, the boat, 3 investment accounts in Gary's name, a commercial property Gary had purchased in Gary's LLC that turned out to have been bought with my trust money 4 years earlier. The total recovered was approximately $2.8 million. Patricia was direct with me about the math. The full amount taken was somewhere between 9 and 11 million, accounting for compounded investment returns never realized. 2.8 million was what existed to recover. The rest was gone. Spent, lost in bad investments, dissipated over a decade of choices I had not been consulted about. She also told me that given my mother's cooperation with the investigation, the criminal referral would likely result in charges against Gary alone, and possibly a plea agreement. My mother would not face criminal prosecution, but was named as a civil defendant and had joint liability for the settlement. I agreed to this. I want to be honest with you about why. Not because I forgave her, not yet, and maybe not ever in the way that word is usually meant, but because sending my mother to prison would not give me back the years I had worked double shifts to pay off loans that should never have existed, and the goal was never punishment for its own sake. The goal was to take back what I could and make sure it could not happen again. The criminal case against Gary resulted in a guilty plea to 3 felony counts. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to the extent of his future ability to earn. His attorney told Patricia he had not understood the account was held in irrevocable trust and had believed the money was more loosely structured family assets. Patricia told me she had heard a lot of excuses in 20 years of trust and estate law, and that one was in her personal top 5. With the recovered funds, I paid off my nursing school loans in full for the first time since I graduated. I bought an apartment in Seattle, a real one, 2 bedrooms on the 4th floor of a building in Capitol Hill with a small balcony that catches the afternoon light. I own it. The deed has my name on it, only my name, and no one can take it from me. The 2nd bedroom is Diane's. I want to be clear about that because I know some of you are going to ask. Diane spent 4 years sharing a 1-bedroom apartment with me, picking up extra shifts at the roastery when I was short on rent, bringing me food on the nights after brutal shifts when I couldn't face cooking. She drove me to Patricia's office the morning I had to sign the initial documents, and she sat in the waiting room for 3 hours reading a paperback and didn't ask a single question until I was ready to talk. People like Diane do not fall out of the sky. When I found out I was going to be okay, the first call I made was to Patricia, and the second call I made was to Diane. I told her I was getting a 2-bedroom apartment and that she should tell the roastery she was giving notice. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "Are you serious?" And I said yes, and she cried, which made me cry, which is the most I have cried through this entire ordeal. Uncle Robert did not walk away from this without cost either, and I think that is worth acknowledging. His decision to investigate his own sister's household, to bring a legal team to bear on a family situation, and to deliver devastating news to his niece at her brother's wedding rather than let it disappear. None of that was easy. He told me once, during one of the many conversations we had over those months, that he had thought about not telling me, that he had sat with the information for 2 weeks after his attorney confirmed it and considered the possibility of handling it quietly, making sure the remaining money was protected, never saying a word to me about the full scope of what had been taken. He said he decided against it because it was my life and my money and I had the right to know the truth about both. I think about that a lot. The fact that telling me the truth cost him his relationship with his sister, at least for now. The fact that he did it anyway. Daniel knows everything. He called me 3 weeks after the wedding when the asset freeze had made it into my mother's household and the situation could no longer be kept quiet. He was quiet on the phone for a long time after I finished explaining, and then he said, "I'm so sorry, Maya. I had no idea." I believed him. Daniel and I have had dinner twice since then, and we do not talk about Gary or my mother unless one of us brings it up first. We are finding our way back to just being siblings, which takes time, but is going well. My mother and I do not have a relationship right now. I don't know if we will. I still remembered the casual shrug. I still remember the casual shrug. I still remember the casual shrug. As she handed me 200 in mincemeat, makes me angrier than I knew what to do with. There are other mornings when I think about the woman who sat across from me in that coffee shop looking tired and older, and I feel something closer to grief than rage. I am not resolved about this. I don't think I need to be yet. What I am resolved about is this. I am 32 years old. I have a profession I love and an apartment I own and a best friend in the next room and an uncle who chose honesty when he could have chosen convenience. I have a body of work. Years of night shifts and hard days and patience whose names I still remember, that is entirely mine and that no one can put a lien against. My father put that money away for me because he loved me and because he wanted to make sure I would be okay. For a long time, through no fault of his, it couldn't do that job. But I was okay anyway. I built a life that worked with what I had. And now I have more, and I intend to do something worthy of both the life I built and the one he tried to give me. I think he would understand that. I think he would be glad. If you are watching this and you have a feeling that something in your family's financial history does not quite add up, a trust you were told was depleted, an inheritance that was smaller than expected, an account you heard about once and then never again, please talk to an estate attorney, not a family member, not a family friend, an attorney whose job is to represent you and only you. What happened to me is not as rare as you might think, and the people it happens to are often the ones who loved and trusted, the people who did it, which makes it harder to look at directly. Look anyway. To my father, wherever that means anything, thank you. I've got it from here.